It is a scandal likely to fuel the long-standing tensions between Washington and Pyongyang. A media report accuses US and South Korean special forces of parachuting into North Korea to spy on underground military facilities. The source was an American Army general who admitted the missions had happened. It's been vehemently denied by Washington, which now accuses the journalist behind the report of making up the quotes. However, he insists that what he published was exactly what he heard. Let's try and shed some light on this now with Niall Bowie, an independent writer and photojournalist based in Malaysia. Good to see you. Thank you for coming on RT today. First of all, let's have a listen and see exactly what the writer, David Axe, exactly what he had to say.
I did not make them up. Multiple sources confirmed Tolly's words, and I'm now told no transcript will be made available. US Forces Korea is lying about what happened in the room with Tolly last week.
You are a journalist yourself. What's your take on the story? Do you believe that Axe's claims that the Pentagon is now on a face-saving mission?
Thanks for having me on the show again here. Well, I've been a long-time Korea watcher, and yesterday I was just browsing the internet. On Press TV, I originally saw this article posted, and it seemed a bit strange and a bit too forward, even for the U.S. to be conducting that kind of operation within North Korean borders, especially when they have access to drone technology and things like that, which I know, at least what I've read, they've been used in North Korea before. So I looked at some other websites, and according to the website The Diplomat, the General Neil Tolley, he was misquoted by this publisher here about the reconnaissance ops in North Korea, and the website mentions that he was referring to future war plans rather than current operations, and I mean that doesn't really make the situation any better. And I think it indicates we've come to a really dark place with the Obama administration and its foreign policy. That news of the U.S. conducting a completely belligerent operation. I mean, it's a total suicide mission, by the way. A lot of people think, well, maybe that's pretty feasible. Maybe they are doing it. I'm not quite sure. I have my doubts because I think just that kind of operation would be too risky, and I think the Pentagon's plan is really diverting away from boots on the ground and special forces. But I can't really say for sure because they're doing it in Pakistan and Yemen as well. So
certainly we've got covert operations going on worldwide, certainly with drones, as you were mentioning. But the Pentagon insists the Army General was speaking hypothetically. Even if that's the case, hypothetically, what would this do to the long-time agreement which marked the end of the Korean War?
Well, I think U.S. policy on North Korea really it relies on exacerbating the threat from Pyongyang more than anything else, and simultaneously building up the military occupation of the South in various ways as part of the U.S. policy pivot to Asia. I want to just emphasize that the legal infrastructure is already in place at the moment to apply a very belligerent policy to North Korea, including foreign occupation, troop occupation, and preemptive nuclear strikes.
Welcome back, everyone, to GGN. My website is ggnonline.com, and on YouTube it's ddarko2012 and ddarko2013. All the headlines and links will be in YouTube's video description. Okay, so I'll just continue on with some Korea news. Internet addiction poses a serious challenge to South Korea, says a survey. Let's scroll down here. It says critics have also repeatedly linked the suicides of high-profile celebrities and politicians to diatribes by the online groups. Also, it says here the controversy over internet addiction in South Korea mainly arose when a marathon gaming session led to a few deaths in previous years. So this article comes just after I included this in a recent report on Wednesday. South Korea teens flock online and snitch pro-North posts. So yeah, basically it goes on and says that crucial weapons in their campaign to scrub the internet of North Korea sympathizers. So they're going to use basically the ones that are supposedly addicted. So it says here, China arrests high-level U.S. spy in Hong Kong. This is from June 1st. It says here, if this is true, it would also be the highest level spy case involving China and the United States to become public since 1985. So when an intelligence official in China defected to the United States. Then we have this retired Russian colonel convicted of spying for the United States. A retired Russian military officer has been convicted of charges for spying for the United States and sentenced to 12 years in prison, the counterintelligence agency said on Thursday. Says here the latest in a raft of espionage cases that come in tensions between Moscow and Washington. And going back to the China one, if confirmed, it would be the third major incident to hit China-U.S. relations in the past few months. So then we found this one. This is actually from a couple days ago, May 25th. Taiwan businessman jailed for spying for China. So Taiwan Supreme Court has upheld a decision to sentence a businessman to 3.5 years in jail for spying for China. Then moving on here, we have SCO, Armed Forces, to stage Peace Mission 2012 drill. So armed forces from the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or SCO, member states will hold the Peace Mission 2012 drill in Tajikistan from June 8th to June 14th. The drill is a joint anti-terrorism military exercise launched under SCO framework. It says here that the drill will involve more than 2,000 military personnel from China, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Russia, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. Over the decade, the SCO drills have developed from company-level tactical exercises, multi-level exercises featuring strategic consultation, battle preparation, and simulated combat. Then we have Russia to reopen Arctic airbases. Russian air units will this year start preparations to return to the abandoned Arctic airfields. So this is interesting because it ties in with this recent article that I covered, which was Norway, NATO rehearse for war in the Arctic. And so they're saying that this is due to them anticipating that the rising temperatures due to the spraying of aerosols and chemtrails and weather modification will do what? It will open up a treasure trove of resources and long dreamed of sea lanes. Then I found this article, Jamestown, Russia recreates the Berdsk Spetsnaz Brigade. Sorry if I mispronounced that, but it basically says an apparently random movement of Russian special forces. It says here that the battalion located in the Central Military District may be an indication that the General Staff is increasingly concerned about the future security in Central Asia. So, but it also goes on and it says that they're special forces, and it says these elite units retain higher readiness levels than the rest of the Russian ground forces and seem to be rehearsing changes in operational tactics. So these guys were reportedly disbanded in 2009, and since then they've been increased in levels. And the reason for it is the future security of Central Asia following the NATO drawdown in Afghanistan. They say also could be from Moscow's concern about the remote risk to Russian interests resulting from the unilateral Chinese military action in Central Asia. But lastly, they say the biggest coincidence or correlation is Vladimir Putin is a Russian president again, and he has a goal of what? Closer Eurasian integration. Okay, so moving on next, Russia says new U.S. ambassador is unprofessional. It says here Russia is not prepared to get used to the U.S. ambassador. Mr. McFall, a foreign official, was quoted as saying, and it goes on and it says that Russia had to, a U.S. State Department spokesman had said on Tuesday that Russia had to, quote, get used to, end quote, McFall speaking out clearly after Moscow expressed outrage over a speech he gave at an elite university. They basically replied by saying the Americans should not count on the government of a sovereign state to get used to the lack of restraint in language from the head of an embassy mission, the foreign ministry said. So, moving on, media report, fire on Kazakhstan frontier kills 8 to 15 soldiers. So it says here that according to Interfax, weapons disappeared from the frontier following the exchange of fire. Then we have this, Israel to deliver unmanned jets worth over $300 million to Azerbaijan. They just had a deal with weapons, I believe. And it says here, Israel has signed a large military contract with Azerbaijan. According to an Israeli Zeman website, it says aviation industry has signed a contract with them for the supply of some 10,000 unmanned jets, basically drones, right? Clinton says Russian arms sales to Syria raises concerns. So, and some of our concerns are what? That they could lead to a civil war. Well, that's their whole mission, is to create a civil war, to create regime change, to keep the violence going until there's a regime change. So it's just kind of funny that, you know, her and her people, her peeps, are arming these guys, the rebels, these peaceful activists, that are what? They carried out the Houla massacre. So, you know, It says here, Syrian government investigation into the massacre that recently killed more than 100 people has blamed anti-Damascus armed groups for the killings. So it could be both sides. You know, there's probably on both sides, but this is part of the plan. Divide and conquer, create a civil war. That's the whole point. Russia to block Syrian military intervention. Russia says the United Nations Security Council should not consider new measures to resolve the crisis in Syria and signaled it would block any effort to authorize military intervention in its Middle Eastern ally. So this is interesting. It says here, Mr. Littman, a political analyst from the Carnegie Center in Moscow, says, I think Russia has taken a firm stand that it would not be allowed to use the UN Security Council for regime change for toppling a national leader. So then we have this. Might Makes Right says conspirator of Syrian-Iranian conquest, a 2005 interview, profiles psychology of those behind the Houla massacre. It says here that whether we lie about it or invent something or we don't, I don't care. The end justifies the means. What's right? Might is right. Might is right. That's it. So this is in 2005. So if you remember this, General Wesley Clark reveals U.S. plan to invade Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Iran. And just recently, Sudan is up there, Somalia is up there, Lebanon is up there, and Syria is up there. And they're trying again with Iran. Part of this interview, both the Syrian and Lebanese regimes will be changed, whether they like it or not, whether it's going to be a military coup or something else, and we're working on it. We already know exactly who's going to be the replacements. We're working on it with the Bush administration, so they didn't get what they wanted, so they work with the Obama regime. Finishing up, it says that they have access to top classified info from the CIA and all over the world. They call me, I advise them, I know exactly what's going on. The United States is blaming Russia and Iran for upcoming Syria war. Rebels slam ceasefire, vow bigger conflict. So Hillary said the Russians are telling me they don't want to see a civil war. I've been telling them their policy is going to help contribute to a civil war. Military options for Syria are being considered if crisis worsens. Goes on here, says General Dempsey says, I think military options should be considered. Actions under discussion include sending in troops to protect Syria's chemical and biological weapons. And of course, humanitarian mission. And that means if they declare a humanitarian corridor, they can actually start drone bombing Syrian people. So it says here, West may be forced to seize weapons of mass destruction, says a report. So it says here, international troops could be forced to intervene in Syria if the collapse of President Assad's regime were to leave a stockpile of chemical weapons. So if they don't get the RTP rights to protect humanitarian side, then they're just going to go in and say, oh, well, you know, now that Assad is going to finally leave after this big civil war and chaos, and no one's in control, I guess you could say, or they'll just keep saying that he's not in control when he is, but still, they'll say, oh, well, now they got these weapons, like in Libya. Ooh, what is it said? Frog missiles and that, and weapons of mass destruction. They did it in Libya, too. Oh, we better go in there. You know, before the terrorists get them, right? Unfortunately, the terrorists are already there, and the West is funding them. Okay, Israel's military is getting ready for Plan Oz, conducting a bridge-laying exercise across a river, in this case Jordan, under fire a few days ago, the first of such exercises in 5 years. Is a pointer to growing military preparedness that's been underway in recent months in Israel, a growing emphasis on, special forces and swift, deep penetration into hostile territory. So the trend is moving away from big battalions to highly mobile and agile special operations. Then Israel's MK says send human rights activists to prison camps. She says that they should be imprisoned and transported to camps we are building, she said, referring to the detention facilities Israel is constructing in which African infiltrators will be held. I remember this, I didn't mean to shame Holocaust by calling African migrants a cancer. Israel MK. June 1st, confirmed U.S. and Israel created Spetsnaz virus and lost control of it as Obama orders to speed up wave of cyber attacks against Iran. So I guess we know what they're going to use. Pakistani military denies U.S. military trainers came back. They deny claims by U.S. officials that a group of American trainees, i.e. probably CIA, have returned to the country. Then we have this, the golden age of special operations. And they use the examples where they were looking for dead people like bin Laden and Kony to Yemen, where they're doing drone strikes, and Somalia drone strikes. Remember, I covered this when they worked with Norwegian and Australian counterparts in an exercise in Tampa Bay, Florida called Hostage. That's where they were rescuing the mayor, and it was all timed to the annual Special Operations Forces Industry Conference, Remember Clinton saying she had a vision with shadowy U.S. and allied special operation forces working hand-in-hand with American embassies and foreign governments. That's right, U.S. special forces go global. They want to establish a worldwide network linking special forces of allied and partner nations to combat terrorism. That means you folks, you're the threat at home now. Thank you.